All right, you guys, so now we are moving on to the next phase of hatching. We're taking baby steps here. So you guys remember these formulas. I will have these PDFs posted as reference so you guys can access them in the assignment. But you're gonna pick one of these. So you can either try the sphere, okay? You also have the cylinder, the cone, and the cube. For this, personally, I would suggest the cube. I know that sounds weird because the cube is always kind of the harder one, but it's easier to start out with something that has hard edges, okay? Learning how to hatch and curve things is a little bit trickier. So I'm actually gonna sketch out this cube. Don't worry about if your cube is perfectly like angled and all that. Don't even worry about it, okay? So what you guys do need for this, okay? You're gonna use pens. So if you have just like a basic Sharpie, if you happen to have these are my favorite pens for hatching. These are just technical pens, but a regular Sharpie, whatever basic pen you have, any of those will work. So I'll be working just with basic Sharpie for you guys so you can see it, so it'll be dark enough. But we just gotta like sketch this out real quick. So make sure you give yourself enough space. But for the most part, all you're gonna do is just kind of do this rough sketch, do that rough sketch. Okay. Basic idea. No dark lines. Notice that I'm starting with light sketchy marks, as all art really should. And then my cast shadow is gonna kind of come out this way. Okay. It's all right if it's the rough idea. That's fine. If you remember, these lines are going to be kind of diagonal because they're not hard edges. So right here is my 1. That's my lightest. Okay, this is going to 2. This is going to 2. This is going to 3. The top part here is my 5. This is my reflected light, the 4. Same concept. And then the shadow will be 5. Okay. When you're hatching with pen, you're going to erase all your pencil marks. So it's okay if your sketch is not perfect, because you're going to erase that. You're going to use pen. Now that you're hatching with pen, you do have to realize that, you know, you can't erase. You're not going to use white out. If you mess up, you know, it's all right. It either goes in a different direction and you just kind of work with it, or you start over. Not a big deal, okay? Just get in the flow of things. So, most of the time, what I do suggest with people with pen is that sometimes it's a little intimidating and you aren't real sure how to start. So if you start with an edge where you're pretty sure where the shadow is and where the darkest part is, sometimes it's easiest. But 2 things with hatching. One is even your darkest value. So even if your darkest value, you're not just coloring, okay? If I'm doing this with a Sharpie, back and forth, that's coloring in, okay? With hatching, even your darkest value should have a little bit of the sparkle of the paper. Like you should be able to see, you know, a little bit of white. So it's the difference between those 2 areas. You can see white. This is the hatch marks. And this is just coloring and making it solid. So that, no, this is still what you gotta keep doing, okay? So with that in mind, you know, if you start with the area that's the darkest, sometimes that's most comforting. But 2 things with hatching, okay? 1, you're not coloring it in. And then 2, you are not outlining, okay? So same as what we worked on all semester long. If I'm trying to like show where the shadow is, so right here is my darkest part, okay? That's my 5 shadow because this edge is gonna create it. So I'm not gonna with the pen. I have a pencil line, so I know where to draw. But right here, I'm hatching up into the edge. So I'm gonna make the edge with my hatch marks. I can start small like this. If I wanna make them bigger, I can. Whatever level you're at comfort-wise. I totally just made that like, you know, and even as I was changing as I was talking, right? But you know what, we'll go back and fix it. Because this is my darkest shadow. So like I said, I can kind of adjust this. So now, me personally, I find it easier to be consistent. So if this is the angle that I'm most consistent on with my hatch marks, when I'm gonna cross hatch, I rotate my paper so that my motion is the same. If I change my hand angle, I'm going to get inconsistent. So just, you know, rotate your paper. So if I want to do a 45-degree angle on these, or, you know, crosshatch, I can come in here now and crosshatch. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of trying to like even out that edge. So my corner is going to line up a little bit differently, okay? I can come in, you know, it's a little bit of a cheat, but since I still want this is my darkest value, so I'm going to crosshatch. So I can come back in with this direction too. And I'm not going to like outline it, but I can kind of reinforce that edge with this kind of a thing. Okay, and I can keep going because you know what? This whole side is going to be my darkest side. So if I want to kind of keep going here, I'm going to keep going. Okay. So about halfway is when it starts getting lighter. So, you know, for this part, it's okay to get like real solid dark, but I'm creating it through hatch marks. I'm not creating it through that coloring. Okay, so you can see one of the tricks of hatching is to build up layers. So if I didn't mention this before, working with hatching is a little bit more time consuming. You do have to slow down and be a little patient with yourself and with the hatching process. So this is, even though it's just one simple little object, it might take you a little while. So, you know, it's okay to start it and come back to it. Okay, but you can see, right? See how I can see the edge. I totally did not outline it, whatever, okay? So doing this is much different than this. If I were to do this, this is, you know, once again, do not do this. Okay, this is the not to do thing. I'm not gonna do this. I'm not outlining it. Okay. I'm gonna rely on the shadow and the highlight. So the difference is the shadow is creating that edge. Okay. You know, over here, this is white, so I'm gonna leave that. This is, you know, this is a 2. This is just slightly over here. So the other not hatch mark, but the other mark that you can try with these objects if you want to, we have hatching, cross hatching, and the third of traditional pen marks is called stippling, and that is dots. Okay. The more dots I put together, the darker value. If I just want a little bit of dots, it's going to be a lighter value. So over here in this corner, if I want to start with light hatch marks, I can, or less hatch marks. So I'm gonna come back to this again. So if I start and I try to like go, okay, I'm gonna, you know, just do like a light stippling over here because this is a 2. So it's gonna be slightly darker than this edge. If I have an outline, then that kind of defeats the purpose, right? I can start with, you know, light hatch marks too over here. Okay, either of those. So the difference is when I do it over here, right? If I want to just start with like a light hatch mark, so I spread them apart, you know, I could do that kind of all across the top here. Just make a real light one. And then when I come back over here, this is going to be a 3. So this is going to be darker. Okay. So you can see where I overlapped them here, it automatically made it darker. So beware of where you overlap. Where you overlap is probably more where it's going to transition into here. So that a little bit of a mistake on my part tends to happen as I'm talking. So, you know, well, all I got to do is just continue because this is another mark that I kind of had. So if I kind of touch that up a little bit, and I just got to even this out so that that part's a little bit darker. So if this part gets a little bit darker, it's okay, because now I can come back with this part, because this 3 can still be darker. It's nowhere near a 4 yet. Okay. So now that is definitely lighter, and then that one is darker. Okay. I can still kind of, you know, darken this up and smooth this edge a little bit. I can try a little bit of stippling in here to transition if I want to. Okay, but you get the idea. That worked, right? You can see the edge just fine. So at the end, once you're done with the whole thing, okay, that looks just fine. We got a half a line. This is a 2, that's a 3. Down here, I would make darker than this, but lighter than that for my 4. Okay, this would just stay white. One last thing, sorry, I almost forgot. So this edge here, it's gonna be kind of blank. So down here, one thing that I kind of like to do, because I don't want, I can't outline this because that would look awful, but sometimes you need a little bit. Your eye will connect to the dots, so to speak. That does not mean don't do this. That's still an outline. But what I can do is down here, like I said, I could, if I wanted to choose and use like dots for my 2, and I could work a little bit of, hatching in there too. But what I can do is I can kind of creep this up the side a little bit and do a little bit of a light, really light value. Okay, and so that way when I come down, to here, this is going to be, the same as that. So down here I can kind of work this in. Okay. Then kind of fade into that, and I can fade that in. But then when I end up erasing, oh man, I don't even have an eraser out here. When I erase this, your eye will totally just make that connection. Hold on, keep that thought a second. I really don't use erasers. All right, but once I erase these, hopefully this doesn't leave too bad of a mark because it's a really old pencil I just found in my garage. All right, once I get rid of these marks, okay, and obviously this part would still, but your eye is just going to make that connection. It's going to connect that and that. So like I said, if this corner, if I didn't, if I needed to kind of get a little bit of dots in here, how we said we're going to kind of transition that. Okay, I got that edge. Your eye is going to like connect that. So it's okay if this is a little bit blank. Okay, I would continue, making this into a 2, right? Okay, and then I'll continue that. But for what you guys are doing, you would continue this, follow the formulas. So your project for the week is to practice hatching enough, and then when you have found and practiced a few objects, pick the best one in pen, erase all the pencil marks, and whichever one you guys got the best 3D look with hatching, you're gonna turn that in. All right, happy hatching.